Hello everyone. The purpose of this video is to give a brief overview for the website or web pages option for your final research project. So during week 4, and by the end of week 4, you'll need to choose what project type you're going to create to share your research findings, discuss your sources, examine their evidence and their arguments, and then ultimately convey your conclusions based on, of course, the prompts and the questions that are offered in the instructions for the topic that you chose. So you get to choose whether you're going to create a traditional paper or you're going to create a website or web pages presentation, or you're going to create a video. This video here is to help you understand the ways to go about creating your website or web pages option if that's what you choose. Or during week 4, if this is something you're considering, this will let you know how to go about it. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go to the Adobe Spark page, their website, because this is the method that we'll be using to create our website or web pages presentation. You're going to need to hit the Start Now button and create an account. Good news is it's a free account, so you don't have access to all of the options that you would have with a paid Adobe subscription, but you do get to create a lot of great material for free. And that's everything that you need to complete this research project, you will get with the free account, I assure you. Okay, so once you've created a free account, then you're going to log in. So I'm going to log in so you can see my view. And I do have an Adobe account. I haven't created anything in this particular account yet because I use my West Hills account, but I might have some options here, access to certain photos that you might not see on your end. I'm only going to give you one example anyway, so that's kind of a moot point, but you're just going to need to be resourceful, especially when it comes to grabbing images, because ultimately the content itself, the things that you'll be typing up, are going to be based on your sources and your analysis and their arguments and their evidence and then your conclusions, right? So most of the content is going to be what you type into it that I'm able to read as the viewer of your website or web presentation. But you do want some impactful images. That's key to storytelling. And doing a web page or website format not only allows for that visual storytelling, but really requires it. You need to have some images to supplement your words and your findings when using this particular format. But that can be fun. It allows you to be a little more creative with it as well than maybe just a traditional paper if you don't feel like that's your strong suit. All right, so when you log in, you might see this page or you might see a different page, but what you want to look for ultimately is this. These options of different presentations that you can create using Adobe Spark. We're, of course, going to do the web pages one for the website or web pages presentation. You have different formats, different layouts. We're going to use the Teach and Study option. Okay, so here we are at the title page of this web pages presentation. So obviously we need an impactful image and we need an impactful title and subtitle. And I, as the viewer, should be able to log on to your website that you create, this web page presentation, and immediately from the first page know what you're going to be talking about as far as content, and know specifically what your conclusions are. And I'm going to give you an example of one way you could go about that. So for this example, I'm going to use a topic from the History 17B course that examines Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal policies and the Great Depression. And specifically, the prompt is asking you, the student, to read through some sources that argue different aspects, different angles of that. Some authors might argue that the New Deal policies did end the Great Depression or help resolve the Great Depression, while other authors might argue the opposite, that not only did the New Deal policies not answer the issues of the Great Depression, but they actually made things worse and perpetuated it or allowed it to persist longer than necessary. So you're going to read all of your sources. You're going to make sure you understand what prompts, what questions you need to address when going through your sources, so you can take good detailed notes that you'll be able to use in this website. Because you're going to need to create a page in this presentation for each of your sources that lays out that source's argument, that lays out, you could maybe have something about that author, but lays out their argument in the particular source. I should know what source you're talking about, the title of it, of course, what their argument is, and what evidence they use, and then how effective you think they were in their argument and why or why not. All right, and so your content would be like your pages below this title page would be all of your content. That would be like the body of an essay, and your title page and your last page should be like your intro and your conclusion. And every introduction in an effective paper has a thesis statement so that immediately the reader knows where you stand or what you're going to contend. And so let me show you one way that you could go about doing this. So using that idea of, or the example of looking at Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal policies and whether or not they helped address the issues of the Great Depression, I could put up a picture of a bread line, something that paints a picture of the effects of the Great Depression. Or since this is looking at a specific president's policies, I could put up a picture of that president, of FDR. So let's do that just for this example. When you add a photo, you have some options. Find free photos. You may see the Adobe Stock Photos option, which I believe you will have even with the free version. But again, if you don't and you just see find free photos or upload photo, there's still ways to do this. Let's look at uploading a photo because this is really important. You need to cite any photos that you pull from the internet. Excuse me. So if you're going to look up images of FDR online, then I would need to know where you got the image, where you decided to pull the image from, which includes the website URL, and when you accessed it. So for example, if you chose to use this picture of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, then you would need to include in your bibliography, update your bibliography to include image of Franklin D. Roosevelt. I'm not specific on the format. I'm not using MLA or Turabian or anything like that. I just want you to properly cite where you got it from. So it could be as simple as this. Image of Franklin D. Roosevelt, comma, accessed, and whatever date you actually pulled this image off of the internet, period. And then have this website URL here. Copy and paste that. Okay, that's it. That way I know when I look at your bibliography, oh yes, this image in this web presentation was pulled off of this website on this date. And there's at least a somewhat proper attribution for where you pulled that image. But that's necessary for every single image you get off of the internet, okay, for the purpose of this project. Or you might be able to find something in Find Free Photos. Now let me show you a little tip here. Let's say I type in Franklin Roosevelt. Okay, so look, nothing really, right? I have these two images and neither one of them are impactful. But what if I just change it to FDR? See, it's all about how these things are saved, right? So I still don't have any pictures of the man himself, but I do have this image of this bust, which is pretty effective as well. It's obviously Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We're looking at history and reflecting back on the memory of his presidency. So there's nothing wrong with using a monument, right? That's imagery in itself. So let's add a title, all right? And I'm just going to add a generic one. So you'll come up with your own. But let's just say we called it The New Deal and the Depression. Okay, that tells me really quickly what we're looking at, right? Pretty obvious, the New Deal and the Depression. Your subtitle would be more like your thesis statement, right? And this is not going to be a great subtitle, but let's just say why FDR's policies failed to address the issues of the Great Depression. Okay, now this isn't a great choice of words because I have this main title ending in depression and then I have the subtitle ending in depression. That's redundant. So I wouldn't actually use this. I'd come up with another way to say this. But my point in showing you this is just so that you could see that, okay, if I'm the viewer and I log on, I'm going to immediately know, okay, we're dealing with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We're specifically looking at his New Deal policies in the Great Depression. And then I already know how you feel about it, what your contention is, because you're saying that this is going to essentially lay out why his policies failed to address the issues of the Great Depression. Right? On the other end, you could just as easily say, succeeded in addressing the issues of the Great Depression, or succeeded in solving the issues of the Great Depression. All right, point being, this image tells me what you're going to be talking about. This specifies it a little bit more. This specifies it even more. So by the time I'm done looking at this initial title page, I know where your website is going to take me. And now I'm going to follow your content, follow how you build up to convincing me, or at least successfully arguing, that his policies succeeded or failed in addressing the issues of the Great Depression. All right, so now you get to this next option. You can add a photo, another photo if you think that's effective. You can add text here if you think that's effective. You can add a new page. And this new page could be an image on one side. If you want to switch it, and I want my image over here, and now I'm going to lay out here all of my content, my information. This could be where you start discussing your first source. Maybe here you want to discuss, like, make this more like an intro paragraph, right? So you could type out something about, different historians have argued, and this is just not a great way of wording it, but different historians have argued different things about the success of FDR's New Deal policies in addressing the issues of the Great Depression, blah, 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 right? And you could just give an overview. And then you could start, maybe introduce your sources here. And then by the time you're getting in here, I'm already aware of who your sources are and what you're looking at, that you're going to be showing me some different sources with some different takes on the issue. So again, how you lay this thing out is completely up to you. You might even want to add a video at some point. If you find that there's a great video that supplements, something that you're talking about or that's talked about in this particular source, you could add a video here from YouTube or something. But make sure it's effective, because this right here is really more dangerous than profitable when it comes to this research project, because I'm not concerned about this. This isn't going to help your grade in any way. All right, this is just if you want to get creative with it and you think it's effective. But this, adding a video, is not going to help your grade on this project. Your most important thing is demonstrating that you've read the sources thoroughly, that you understand their arguments and their evidence, and that you've reached what's the word I'm looking for? You've reached a conclusion on how effective their argument was. All right, and then you go on to your next source. And here you might add your next web page. Now here's one thing I would recommend. If you put your image on this side of your first source page, and you're going to do another one with another image here, then I would put it on this left side. And you'll notice that it will automatically do that for you, because that's just good symmetry. It's going to balance it out. But you don't want to switch this over and now have image, image, text, text. It's okay, but it starts to feel a little bit redundant and linear. And if you kind of attract to the eye in different ways, you're going to keep the viewer engaged in looking at both sides of each web page. So you're going to just go through and lay out each of your sources and give me information about what they talk about in that source. I need to know, who the author is, what the source is, and then what their argument is, what their evidence is, and how effective it is or is not, and why. And then ultimately, you will get down to a final page where you will give your conclusions. And then I'm going to also ask that at the bottom of your final page, you include your bibliography. So again, that's going to include the bibliography that you already created in week 3 for your sources themselves. And then it's also going to include any extra bibliographical citations that you need to add for any images that you've pulled off of the internet. If you use the images that are free on here, it will automatically plug in attributions for you. But if you don't, if you pull something off of the internet, you need to create that citation. Again, not really picky on the format as long as I know what image you're talking about, what date you accessed it or pulled it off of the internet, and then what the URL is or the web address is for that specific image. That if I plug that into my browser, it would take me right to that image. As long as you have that, that's a successful citation for the purposes of this project itself. All right, so that's how you essentially begin going about your creating your web page presentation. Now, you can preview it at any point, and when you scroll down, it'll take out all those gaps where you were able to add in stuff, and you would just be able to scroll through. See right here, this attribution for that image that I pulled, because I pulled that off of the free images, it automatically gave that attribution in the credits. But again, it's not going to do that if you're pulling your images from the internet. That's why you have to manually create a bibliographical citation for it. So just remember, when you get to your last page, that should be all of your conclusions. And then if room allows, add a bibliography section. If not, you can always create one final page that has your bibliography with all of your citations on it. Okay? Now, once you've completed that and you're happy with how it looks, and you've got all your research in there, now you can share it. So what you would do is you would click Share, Publish, and Share Link. All right? And then this is where you're going to make sure that your author name is correct in here. And this is where you're going to pick a category for it. So you can call this Education. And then as long as everything's ready to go, you can hit Create Link. So this will publish this site at this link. And then all you need to do for the purpose of turning this in when you submit your final research project is you're going to be able to go to the text entry option where you submit your final project, and you're going to be able to just copy and paste this shareable link into that text entry option. When I receive that, I'm going to be able to click, log on, and view everything in your web page presentation. All right. Of course, if you have any questions, please let me know as far in advance as possible so that you don't run up against the deadline for submitting the final research project and then not really understand how to go about doing it. So shoot me an email as soon as you have any questions. And the most important thing for week 4, in addition to choosing your project type, is making sure you're already looking at those prompts and questions, reading through all of your sources thoroughly. So there's a lot of pages to get through in addition to all of our other stuff that we have to do in week 4, and taking good detailed notes that are going to help you when it comes to setting up this web page presentation.